Good afternoon. It is Wednesday night. I know it's kind of hard to figure out sometimes. Is it Wednesday? Is it Thursday? Is it Monday? Is it Tuesday? I don't know what day of the week it is anymore most of the time, but it is Wednesday. The computer here that I'm looking at shows me it says it's Wednesday. So Wednesday night Bible study, we are in the book of James. James chapter 3, and this is one of the harder things we're going to talk about in the Christian walk, and that's taming the tongue. Taming our mouths, just trying to watch what we say, and it's a really important and good thing. We're going to start, just read the chapter, James chapter 3, beginning in verse 1. Not many of you should presume to be teachers, my brothers and sisters, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. We all stumble in many ways. Those who are never at fault in what they say are perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. What he's talking about in this with leaders of the church, with being teachers, is leadership positions within the church, within the body of believers. And it's not saying don't do it. It's just an admonishment to know that you need to be careful. You need to watch what you say. In this time, it was popular in this time for people. They wanted the position for the prestige that it held. Paul ran into all kinds of people, and he would always talk to them about, especially when he's talking about works, and people did these works so they could brag on themselves, not to show their faith or to show a belief in God, to try to live out their belief in front of others. They weren't about that. They were about them. And James is telling these people, listen, teachers are valuable in this time. This is a brand new church. This is the beginning. And so teachers were important because they were the ones who were leading people, that were mentoring people. Teachers are still very important in the church. I believe that mentorship is just, it's up there. We need that. Each generation needs to be to be mentoring and teaching the next generation, so that as they come into these positions, as they get older themselves, they can also mentor those, and the church continues. And if we never teach, if we never mentor, if we never pass on the knowledge of God, then the church is going to die. Go back to the Old Testament. I think it was King Josiah. If I'm not right on this, you can correct me. But they were renovating the temple, and the priests found the book of the law in there, and they brought it to him, and he read it, and he just went, oh no. Because nobody had been teaching correctly for so long, they had forgotten most of what was in the book of the law, and he was just sitting there going, he's like, oh wow, man, we got this wrong. And he prays to God. He says, God, I'm so sorry. We just didn't know. And he gathers all the people together, and he reads to them, and he tries to get that information again. We don't need to get to that point. So teaching is important, but we need to be careful when we teach that we're not teaching for our own prestige and our own, look at me. We don't want that. But that we're teaching out of a heart of servanthood and a heart for the church and a heart for just a heart for God and for furthering the church and furthering the mission of God. So, I'm sorry, I stopped there, but so it says everybody stumbles. I like that verse too. We all stumble in many ways. Teachers aren't perfect. Leaders in the church aren't perfect. If you think that I'm perfect, what have you been looking at for the past year? I'm far from perfect. But it's that striving and that heart for God that is important, that is so important. So a sign of maturity is controlling the tongue. We'll continue verse 3. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder, wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boast. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole person. It sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and it itself is set on fire by hell. All kinds of birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by human beings, but no one can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives, or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. It can't be done. Now, going back in verse 3, and he gives it 3 through, make sure I've got it right, 3 through 6, we have this, if you look at your whole body, and all of us are very similar in this, and you look at the size of your tongue compared to the rest of your body, it's very, very small. If you look at the size of a rudder on a ship, and they still use the same basic technology there. It may not be driven by the winds, by sails. It's driven by motors, by props and screws and turbines and whatever they call them. All my Navy people are going to tell me something that I said wrong there. They're driven, but it's still that rudder. You think about like an aircraft carrier, and this is a city on water. It's huge. But you look at the size of the rudder compared to the rest of the ship, and that small thing is controlling which direction this is going to go. It's the same thing with our tongues. The tongue is a small part of our body, yet it has an inordinate amount of influence over how we're seen, over how we relate to other people. It just has a large amount of influence. And when we're looking at that, I think about this. I look at these examples, especially with a fire. There's a song that only takes a spark to get a fire going. It doesn't take much. You can just a little bitty flame, and it can turn into something huge. We built a fire pit at the house. Let's say Kirk mostly built the fire pit. I helped out a little bit. Built a fire pit at the house, and we had to kind of teach this, but you have to be kind of careful about what you're burning, how much is there, how much wind is going on, because you don't want to take one of those small little embers that get blown out to go into some kind of dry brush nearby, and just huge fire can come along. It takes a very little bit. The tongue can actually go 2 ways here. Now, as he's saying this, as James is saying this, if you keep going down in verse 6, at the end of verse 6, it says it corrupts the whole person. The tongue is also fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It absolutely is, and it can be. We can absolutely tear a person to shreds by nothing more than words. You don't have to physically beat somebody. You don't have to physically beat somebody up to truly hurt them deeply. And in fact, I would say that words probably hurt much more deeply than fists. We can, for the most part, and I'm not trying to go to extremes, but for the most part, I've been punched, and I can heal from that. I can heal from that very quickly. But I've gotten a tongue lashing before, deserved or undeserved. I've had words spoken to me that cut me down just to the quick, cut my heart, and it takes a lot longer to get over that. So the evil that can be done by the tongue is great. However, the good that can be done by the tongue is also great. And that's a part that when we talk about a fire, the words we speak, if we're speaking life, if we're speaking love, in short, if we're speaking God into the lives of those around us, if we're speaking God into the air around us, if we're praising God with our actions, with our words, especially as we're talking about with the tongue, with our words, if we're lifting other people up, that can really start a fire as well. That's another spark. That's another thing that can start. You can turn somebody's whole day around but just a kind word. Our tongues are unusually powerful, and we do have to be careful about that. Now, as you go further, verse 7, he's talking about all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, sea creatures. We've tamed all kinds of animals. I am discovering that you cannot tame a cat. It just doesn't happen. We have a cat in the house now, and she pretty much rules everything. I think she's trying to tame us. But, you think about horses. Horses are powerful, big, powerful animals, yet they can be tamed. They can be trained to allow a rider and to go, and do so much more work than what we can do. And we've trained them to do that. Now, not me, but somebody else has trained them to do that. You look at all the domesticated animals and sizes and things. I look at dogs. Dogs are kind of amazing to me because there's some very large dogs that could do a great amount of damage to their owners and never would, because this thing has been tamed. We can tame all kinds of animals. We can control the behavior of all kinds of animals. And it's an amazing thing that we can do. Yet this tongue, this mouth that we have, this language that we've been given, it's very difficult. And he's putting that into there. Listen, it's difficult to train your mouth. It is difficult not to let that word pop out. He says in chapter 1, this is so go back to chapter 1 of James. Chapter 1, verse 19, to go back to it. My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Control what comes out of our mouths. And it's difficult. You can't stop, somebody told me, you can't stop a bird from flying over your head, but you can sure keep it from making a nest in your hair. That's what I've been doing for the last few years. I'm not actually going bald. I'm just keeping from nests being formed. Yeah, right. You're not always going to stop the thoughts that come to your head. You're not always going to stop that thought that, I could just tell somebody off right now. You're not going to stop that thought that comes to your mind when somebody cuts you off in traffic, or somebody, just about runs over you in the store, or whatever else that's going on. When you see somebody do something and it just gets on that last nerve that you have. Yet we as mature Christians, and showing that we are mature in our walk with God, can control that. It is difficult. I'm not saying it's not, but it can be controlled. We can not speak words that don't need to be spoken. We can keep ourselves from harming somebody even in trying to help them. You see, we are told to keep each other accountable. We are told to teach and to mentor, to go back to the teaching part of it. But we can destroy all of our teaching with one wrong word. I have said, I was told by teachers over and over and over, and I'm telling you, teachers are saints. They're like, most of them, some of mine were, obviously. But they keep telling me, I've got a question. They'll go, there's no such thing as a stupid question. I have found out as a parent, there is such thing as a stupid question. Absolutely. Yet those teachers, those people who are trying to further the knowledge of others and to grow others, to nurture other people, they'll tell you there's no such thing as a stupid question. In their mind sometimes they're going, that was a stupid question. But their words that they speak can completely shut off the student. We have to tame our tongues. And it is difficult. It doesn't mean that the words don't want to fly out. But it's a reflection of what's in our heart. Verse 10, out of the same mouth out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Let's get a historical context on what he's really talking about. Many of the prayers, there were set prayers. There were like a book of prayers. There were things that you just said in prayer in the Jewish faith, and he's talking mostly to Jewish Christians in this. And when they're talking about blessing God, they truly mean that in their prayer life. They are just saying, bless your name, God, bless who you are. Great all blessings to you. It is a praise to God. And when we're talking about cursing someone, cursing a person, we're not talking about just dirty language. We're not talking about just, as they say, cussing them out. We're not talking about that. That might be part of it. I remember, if you remember the show Designing Women, Dixie Carter was an actress on this show, and she just, every couple of episodes, she would just run somebody down. Nothing improper ever came out of her mouth. It'd just be monotone and just, not yelling and screaming, but she would absolutely rip somebody to shreds. And it was kind of like, it was neat to watch. It's not just the curse words, though. I can rip somebody to shreds. I can tear somebody down. I can curse someone without ever using the words. When it's talking about cursing a person, it's literally talking about you are proclaiming that they are cut off from God. They are cut off from the body of believers. They are cut off from the blessings of God. They are cut off from the love of God. And that is not in our power to do. And that's not something, it should never be something that we wish on anybody. We should be wishing for everyone to come to God. That's what we're supposed to do, right? So, with our tongue, we can mess that up. With our mouth, we can totally mess that up. We can't be cursing people. We can't be proclaiming that you just have no part with God. Can't do that. And in the same breath, or the next breath, go, praise be to God. No, 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 no. It doesn't work that way. And that's a reflection of our heart. Our mouth, our actions reflect, as James says, our actions reflect our faith. So your works, what you do, will reflect what your faith is. Your words reflect what's in your heart. Such as a man speaketh, such as a man thinketh, so is he in his heart. So much what comes out of your mouth will show what is in your heart. And if your heart is conflicted, there's going to be conflicting things coming out of your mouth. And so that's part of that. It's purifying the heart so that we can tame the tongue. Because we can't have both. Are we perfect? No, we talked about that. We're not perfect. But it can't be both. Keep going in verse 13. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Such wisdom, and it has the quotes around it, does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and every evil practice. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. What's in your heart? That's what's going to be shown. There's a quote here that just really sums up kind of what we just read right there, and I like it, so I'm going to read it directly from here. It says, James is a show me book. I'm going to do this again, show me book. If you think you are religious, show it by your speech. If you think you have faith, show it by your actions. If you think you have wisdom, show it by your conduct. What are you showing the people around you? Are you longing for wisdom from above? Are you asking the Lord for wisdom from above? Are you demonstrating the wisdom from above? We need wisdom to walk this relationship, to walk this life, to walk this relationship with God, to get through life. We need that wisdom. But that wisdom that we need to make it work, to make it right, comes from God. There is a wisdom that comes from this world. And again, I'm going to use air quotes on that. There is a wisdom that comes from this world that says, hey, this is the way to go. That is completely opposite from what God tells us. There is a wisdom that comes from our own humanity, from our own heart, that own human nature that's in us, that fights against that godly nature in us, that tells us different things from what God teaches. And it's this wisdom of God that helps us overcome that. It's the wisdom of God, and we're not talking about difference between wisdom and intelligence, or knowledge. Knowledge is you know things. Wisdom is you know what to do with things. It takes wisdom to know when to speak and when to be quiet. It takes wisdom to know when to teach and when to be quiet and when to not. It takes wisdom to know when you need to, in gentleness and respect, admonish someone, even use the word discipline someone. It takes the wisdom to use the correct words to do that, so that we are lifting the person up and not just tearing them down. There's a difference in that, because the wisdom of the world is totally different. There's also I wish we were all together because I could just have this stuff out in this commentary that we've been using for this. There's a table, and I like tables sometimes, but it's titled "Wisdom," a column of wisdom from above, and another column of wisdom from below. Wisdom from above says to be pure. Wisdom from below, there's mixed motives. You're never sure what the motives are of a person. So, pure motives versus mixed motives. Wisdom from above, to be peaceable. The wisdom of the world is to be ready for a fight. Always be ready for a fight. Be ready to defend yourself. I can defend myself with peace and by being a peaceful person. The wisdom from above is to be gentle. Earthly wisdom says to be abrasive. To be accommodating is the wisdom from above. To be demanding is the wisdom from below. Basically, it's selfishness versus selflessness. Accommodating doesn't mean that you just lose yourself, but it means that there is a thought of others as well. Whereas demanding is just saying, me. Me. That's not how it's supposed to be. Wisdom from above says to be full of mercy, and wisdom from below says to be unforgiving. And then it goes on, full of good fruit. In the verse, you're full of good fruit. What is the good fruit? Fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, goodness, and self-control. So is that what's coming out of your life? Is that what's coming out of your heart? Is that what's coming out of your mouth to reflect your heart? Also to be impartial. With God, we have the wisdom to learn to be impartial and not to show the favoritism, as James is talking about earlier, and loving everybody equally. And not to be prejudiced in how we think of things, and to be sincere. God gives us the wisdom, and using that wisdom He gives us, we can be sincere in what we say. We can live in such a way that people don't question what's coming out of our mouths. There's a difference between being sincere and saying what somebody wants to hear to manipulate them and what you want to do. In one, we're going to lift them up, and in the other, we're just going to tear them down. This mouth that we have, this tongue that we have, the language that we speak, the language that we have that God has given us is a powerful, powerful tool. People say actions speak louder than words, and that's true. But words can do a whole lot more damage. Absolutely can do so much more damage. So we have to be careful with this tongue. And this tongue of flame, as they call it. Is it God's fire that is burning on our tongue? Or is it the fires of hell that we're spreading around all over us? It's important to know the difference. James chapter 3 is all about learning to control our mouths and understanding the power of speech and the power that our words can have in other people's lives and our own. So as we go through the week, think about that. What am I showing? Again, the question, what am I showing to the people around me? Am I longing for wisdom from above, or am I asking the Lord for wisdom, or am I demonstrating that wisdom in my life? What am I demonstrating to others? Ask yourself that as you go through that. Pray the prayer that's in Psalms. Lord, examine my heart and find if there's any offensive way within me. I'm bungling the words there, but you know what I'm talking about. Create in me a clean heart, Lord. Please, God, create in me a clean heart. And whatever is there that shouldn't be, show me what it is that I can get rid of it. Help me to have the wisdom to tame this tongue that you've given me and to speak love and to speak life into other people's lives. I love you guys. Can't wait till we can get back together. Hopefully that's sooner rather than later. We are praying for that. Continue to pray for that. We do have needs within the church. It's on the prayer list. If you're not a part of the prayer list, send me a text message and we'll get your number in and let you know what's going on. But I love you guys. Praying for you guys. Praying we can get together here sooner rather than later. Love you guys. Bye.